Now we come to the renewed covenant. Matthew chapter 28 verse 1. Now after the Shabbat, toward dawn on one of the Shabbatot, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb. Note in all these examples, the Shabbat ended at dawn. Mark chapter 16 verse 2 reads, and very early on one of the Shabbatot they came to the tomb when the sun had risen. Luke chapter 24 verse 1, and on one of the Shabbatot at early dawn they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. Note that the account given in John is the only one that disagrees with these three witnesses. John chapter 20 verse 1 reads, and on one of the Shabbatot Miriam from Magdala came early to the tomb while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. The fact that 1 out of 4 disagrees means the translation of still dark may need to be examined. The Greek word skotia, Strong's number 4653, primarily means dim. John chapter 6 verse 16 to 22. And when evening came, his talmidim went down to the sea and entered into the boat. They were going over the sea toward Capharnaum, and it had already become dark. And Yeshua had not yet come to them, and the sea was rising because a great wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 5 or 6 kilometers, they saw Yeshua walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were afraid. And he said to them, it is I, do not be afraid. They wished therefore to take him into the boat, and at once the boat was at the land where they were going. On the next day, the story continues. Note this is straightforward. It was already dark at night when these things took place. Then the next day occurs. Acts chapter 4 verse 3. And they arrested them and put them in jail until the next day, for it was already evening. Note again, it was dark, then the next day. Acts chapter 16 verse 9 to 11. And in the night a vision appeared to Shaul. A man of Macedonia was standing, begging him and saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. And when he saw the vision, immediately we sought to go to Macedonia, concluding that the Master had called us to bring the good news to them. Therefore, sailing from Troas, we ran a straight course from Samothrace, and the next day came to Neapolis. Note that the next day follows the night yet again. Acts chapter 23 verse 31 and 32. So the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Shaul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day they left the horsemen to go on with him and returned to the barracks. Again, the next day follows the night. On top of all these scriptural accounts, having the night as the first part of the day seems to be a reversal of many of Yeshua's parables, which he described himself to us as the light of the world, John 8:12, John 9:5, John 12:46, etc. We should walk in the light and not in darkness, John 8:12, John 11:9 to 10, John 12:35, John 9 verse 4, etc. Many of the New Covenant letters likewise use similar parables. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5:5 we read, you are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. See also Romans 13:12 to 13, Ephesians 5 verse 8, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 7 to 8. Why start a day when we all sleep? With so many scriptural references defining the day and when it begins, one wonders what compels some to hold the traditions of the evening to evening Sabbath. To be fair, there are a couple of references that can cause confusion if taken out of context. Leviticus chapter 23 verse 26 and 32. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, on the 10th day of the 7th month is the day of atonement. It shall be a Kodesh gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And you do no work on that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work. a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It is a Shabbat of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. On the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you observe your Shabbat. It is quite clear in the context of this law that the Sabbath for the Day of Atonement differs from other Sabbaths, in that Yahweh specified this particular high Sabbath to be kept from evening to evening. Notice that Yahweh makes it clear by numbering the days that the Day of Atonement is on the 10th day, but the fast commences on the 9th day at evening. Why would Yahweh command us to start the fast on the 9th day at evening if the 10th day started at the evening anyhow? It also makes sense to keep this fast this way, as some children may find it difficult waking, having not eaten at all, to fast through the day and then another night, a total of 72 hours. Another exception is the night of the Passover in which Yahweh led his people out of Egypt. Leviticus chapter 23 verse 5. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings, is the Pesach to Yahweh. One glaring problem of the evening to evening observance is that it is impossible to celebrate your Passover on the evening of the 14th and eat your celebration meal that night. If your day starts in the evening, then celebrate it at night, then you have passed into the 15th according to an evening to evening reckoning. Exodus 12 verse 6 reads, "And you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings, and they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it, and they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it." Note, this whole festival takes place on the one day of the 14th, starting between the evenings and continuing that night. Some express difficulty in correlating the morning to morning reckoning with the Passover, yet the timing of this important festival is not defining when a day starts or ends. Yahweh simply wants us to honor the feast on that night of the 14th because that is the time he led his people out of Mitzrayim. Deuteronomy 16:1. Guard the month of Aviv and perform the Pesach to Yahweh your Elohim, for in the month of Aviv Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. Deuteronomy 16:6. You slaughter the Pesach in the evening, at the going down of the sun, at the appointed time you came out of Mitzrayim. The Feast of Unleavened Bread follows on from the Passover, and we are also commanded to remove leaven from our homes that night. Exodus chapter 12 verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. Something to take into account. If someone keeps Passover at the beginning of the 14th, the end of the 13th, they sit with 8 days of unleavened bread, where the command is clear to eat unleavened bread from the eating of the Pesach for 7 days. Exodus 12:15, verse 19, 13 verse 6 and 7, 23 verse 15, 34 verse 18, Leviticus 23 verse 6, Numbers 28 verse 17. Most importantly, Deuteronomy 16 verse 2 to 3. You shall slaughter the Pesach to Yahweh your Elohim from the flock and the herd in the place where Yahweh chooses to put his name. Eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction. Note that this suggests that Passover is the start of the 7-day unleavened bread period, which is a continuous 7-day period and not an 8-day period. The festival of unleavened bread simply cannot begin at sundown after the Passover, as Scripture commands the leftovers to be burnt before morning, which involves kindling a fire, something forbidden